Hello and good afternoon, everyone. This is Naishad Gadani coming to you from Melbourne. Today is the 220th episode of Career Care Package. It's a show that we started at the start of the pandemic, and I think we are still in the pandemic. We were hoping that 200 plus shows will be post pandemic, but we are still in there. So there you go. We have, sometimes I follow a poet in India, and he says that. The poems that he writes are registers what happens during their phase in India or politically or socially. And I think that's what career care package is. We are registering a phase of, in the world of work or world of work in the context of Australia, what happened during that. So I think in a few years later, when people are reflecting on this, maybe our show will be used as a PhD subject and say, what did they talk about, right? You never know. But welcome again to this episode. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about vision boards. A visual reminders, something that really stays in front of you, and writing that, and how does it really, kind of help you to achieve those career objectives and career goals. That's what we are going to talk about because it's based on one of our cards against insanity, and one of the cards that says that you actually create when do you want to get the job and what will happen once you get a job. So I think creating that visual reminder is a very powerful signal to your brain, which ultimately gets converted into an action. But I'll leave that for Warren to explain and expand on that. But before we get to Warren, let's welcome Caroline Brown.
Thanks, Naish. And yes, some PhD researcher will look back through our videos and go, what were they thinking, I reckon. But it's been fun. And I guess, we'll keep doing this as long as we feel it's being of service. And the cards we've developed, the cards against insanity, we hope to be of service and prompt new ideas. And one of the big ideas that is on the cards is around mindset, and some of the things that you need to do to keep your mindset active, or keep your mind active and your confidence up and your optimism up, because that's equally as important. I mean, that's the driver behind the actions that you take. So yeah, today absolutely delighted to have you back on the show. We were just discussing, it was about a year or so ago, Warren, that you were last with us.
Yes, I think we found out it was around June. I remember it was cold and wet and windy, and yes, it seems it's gone quick, but certainly a lot has happened in that time, and we didn't think the pandemic was going to last as long as it did.
But, yeah, well, it's absolutely fantastic to hear from you, and I guess a great way to start would be to remind people, about the work that you do and how you support job seekers to start off with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the career game for some time now, but probably over 7 to 9 years, I think now, when you look back, mainly in HR. My role's been primarily, I did a psychology degree and got into the ANZ graduate program, and then I moved into public transport, and from there I went into media. So it's kind of jumped a few industries, and primarily the thread that behind all that is that learning and development and recruitment have been primarily what I've been doing. And in the last few years, I've just translated that into the higher education sector, and now really helping students find their way, and particularly during this time. But I really enjoy the range of people I meet. Some years ago, I wrote a book on manage your own career, reinvent your job, reinvent yourself, and that got things rolling. I really wrote that at the time when I was working in the public transport sector, when there was a lot of staff losses and thousands of staff going out the door, and I realised there weren't many resources in Australia to look at that issue. So I wrote that book back then, and since then I've done a few media stints, and like this, and various other articles I write in various journals from time to time. So that's the kind of thing I enjoy doing, but really enjoy working with the students. I get a lot of satisfaction and fulfilment in doing that.
Fantastic. Now, the card that you pulled from the pack that spoke to you the most, or spoke to you greatly or highly, was about vision boards. And I guess a great place to start would be, what is a vision board? Like, why did that one speak to you in terms of a mindset activity that you could take?
Yeah, it speaks very clearly to me. You can probably see on the wall behind me, I've got a number of quotes and a whole range. There's some in front of me that you can't see, but I'm a visual person. I like to be surrounded with inspirational things, and I think the idea of having a vision in your life overall, and in a concrete way, because I think some people find this a little bit esoteric in some ways, but they're very practical implications of having a vision of your future or a vision of where your career might be. And I think traditionally a vision board is something where you can paste things. You can actually be very quite tactile and pick out magazine pictures that might represent your future in some way. Some people might see their retirement in the similar ways. They might see themselves on a boat on a sailing down a river. So they gather pictures that might represent that. But I've certainly done that with my career, and I've done some. I guess one of the most interesting things is my first. I guess what I wanted to be initially when I was about, I guess in year 12, was thinking about being a journalist, but I never actually became a journalist. But I've had this idea of writing, and I've been writing all through my life as well. But I ended up in a media industry in a learning and development role. But I guess the manifestation of that was that I really wanted to get into the media industry, and I actually did. I manifested that, I guess, in many ways by visualizing to a certain extent that I would be liking to work with these kind of people, be working with journalists in that field. But I was in HR where I was able to support them in many other ways. So I guess, I think that's been a thread throughout my life. And I think getting into higher education, similar thing. I started to visualize that would be an area I would really enjoy doing. And at the time, when the first vacancy came up and I applied, I thought, my goodness, how can I ever break into this field? Because higher education to me seems to be a very closed area where people know each other a lot. But I was able to get in because I talked about my background, and the person who recruited me into that role said, yes, I know you didn't have the higher education background, but we were looking for someone who really could understand careers from a very broad perspective and an industry perspective. So hence I'm in the higher education field now. So I guess in a nutshell, visualization has been a part of helping me jump from role to role and sort of looking at really what I'm hoping to get. I'm not saying it's a magic formula. It's something that I think what it does is really energize you. So when you do form a vision of your future, and I know there are some people who will say, look, what happens if you don't get that future? You're going to be setting yourself up for disappointment. And I think, well, in some ways you can bounce back from that, but it does give you a chance to look at that future in a vision, visualizing yourself in the role that you might want to get into. But it brings a whole lot of things together to do that. You can actually start to build some actions each day that might take you a step closer towards that goal. You can set some short-term and medium-term goals towards reaching that goal. And I think if you don't have that clearly, you can be a bit more of a scattergun approach and sort of hit and miss. So, I mean, life is a bit of chance. It's obviously working with chance, but I think it's also a good idea to have some kind of what we call painting the picture of where you might see yourself working, the kind of environment. I always say this to my students: what is it where would you be liking to work? How far is it from your home? What country would you be working in? What kind of people would you be surrounding yourself with? And paint that as an ideal picture and start from there.
It's interesting. I was looking because I think one of the questions we sent and one of the things I said to people was like, what's the science behind vision boarding or visualization? And some of the research that I read was not so much the picture, but the visualize, and this is what athletes do. They visualize the action that they're taking. So if they're a tennis player, it's making that serve and volley or whatever, and actually going through the action steps in their heads, and that's almost as powerful as actually doing it. Yeah. Is that some of the things that you found with the way that you've used like vision board techniques?
Yes, in many ways it's in your imagination to some extent. I could see myself working with some creative people, let's say in the media industry, and really getting energized by those kind of people, but not really knowing what the world of media was like, other than what you see as a consumer of media. But having to work in behind the scenes, I had to kind of visualize what that might be like. I would often sort of see the building I potentially might have worked in, actually physically walking into the building and seeing the people that come out. So those kind of things, I think, sort of help get some idea of what the ideal future might look like. I mean, this can apply in sporting situations as much as a career as well. I remember working with somebody who would often come to a meeting and he would sort of swing his hands in during the meeting, and I said, "So what are you doing?" And he said, I'm a golfer and I really want to be an excellent golfer. So I'm visualizing in my mind how I'm going to hit the best shot. So he would often do the actions, not on a golf course, but he could
Mm.
translate that. And so he said, I'm practicing all the time. So when I get on the golf course, I can now practice that hit and I can get the shot I'm looking for because I've been rehearsing it in my mind many times. And he
how,
actually
to, how to make meetings enjoyable, practice your golf game.
yeah, that's right. Yes, his mind wasn't on the meeting, obviously, but he was focusing on something he wanted to achieve. But
Yeah.
it does show you that I think this cuts across, vision boards, cuts across things like affirmations,
Mm.
and to some extent, it's embedded in earlier sort of spiritual philosophies as well. Creative visualization has been a technique I think used for many years, and I guess in terms of the scientific approach, I guess there are some studies that show that has worked for many people. But
Mm.
the idea of manifesting is foreign to some people. It's to me, it's got something central in my life to that I can. You feel that you have this ability. I think if you're in a core. There was an author called Wayne Dyer who you might have heard about. He wrote a book on this topic called "You'll See It When You Believe It." And I think
Okay.
that's a good expression.
Yeah.
You can see it first, and then obviously you'll believe it, and then you
Mm.
go from there. So I think it's about creating actions and creating attention. I was involved in a management development program which I used to run, and Carolyn, you've been in HR, you might have heard of this one. It's called Investment in Excellence, and it was run by I think called the Pacific Institute, and it was
Mm.
very much about visualizing where you want to be and where you want to go to, and through affirmations mainly. So to use statements like I am a career advisor, I am a pilot, rather than saying I think I will wait, one day I will be. By
Mm.
using the word I am, you actually see yourself as that, and that
Mm.
apparently it creates the tension in the subconscious mind into the reality. So that tension means that in the reality, your mind is having to start moving forward to sort of reduce the tension between the vision and the
Mm.
reality.
Mm.
And I think there's definitely science behind that in terms of moving towards, the subconscious has a big part to play in the emotional side. I think the limbic system in your brain is a big driver of change of behavior because it deals at the emotional level. And I always think that if you're setting up a vision board, that you sort of start to think about what does it feel like to be in that environment, not just
Mm.
intellectually what it is, but get the emotion behind that as well.
Mm.
I think that's important. So you're actually getting all your modalities working at the same time.
Love it. Yep.
Yeah. I can probably give you an contradicting example. I had Sylvester Stallone in my, on my wall when I was in university days, and it hasn't turned out at all. So probably I failed at visualizing.
Oh, what
My
was
body
he
is
supposed
probably
to be
more like,
doing?
yeah,
You wanted,
I know. I had the Rambo thing, what with his all six
oh.
pack muscles and everything, but it didn't turn out. I think I didn't visualize it enough. But I think one of the things that I participated
Sorry.
in landmark education seminar, and one of the seminar that we had was around this idea.
Mm.
And I can vividly remember. I'm not an expert onto that, but I can say that everything that we do has got a pattern of neurons in our brain. It fires in certain way
Mm.
that causes an action to happen.
Mm.
When you visualize, what effectively is happening is that you're creating new pattern in your
Yeah.
brain
Yes.
where the neurons fire in certain way. Now neurons are, there are billions and billions of, nobody knows how many, okay? Don't ask me those questions, but they fire in certain way, and that firing, or they being activated in certain way, cause you to act in way. So for example, a lot of sports stars, a lot of actors and everyone else, what they are essentially happens is that when, going back to the example of the golf, for example, what essentially is happening is that you are creating new patterns of neurons where they get activated. It does impact you. Now obviously, you know the emotions in the subconscious may play a role, but if you look at just from the physiological point of view, that's precisely what causes you to take action.
Yeah.
And that I found the most profound one. And I was in this seminar, and the seminar leader talked about it and everything, and there was a pin drop silence. He said, "Hang on, do I have any control over what I do, or is it completely done by my brain? And my brain really, am I like a puppet, and the brain plays everything, and I've got no control over what I do?" But I think that's what. And I've seen my son, who is, who plays cricket, my both of them, but the younger one plays at a remarkable level. And when I've observed him, that when he's at home, he's also doing that practice,
Yeah.
even without ball as well. He's constantly doing it. So I think that's what happens. His body and the that really kind of captures that action and fires when it's necessary to do that. So I think that's the
Yeah.
bit of science behind it, not necessarily an expert on that, but yeah.
Yes, no, I've seen it described like, the water is running down the same pathway, and it's creating that conditioned pattern. And to break out of that, it is about very much setting up new pathways for your brain to be able to say, look, okay, I'm used to traveling down this way. Let's try another route. But it can be part of habit formation. Habit formation, I guess, in some ways, the theory is that about 21 days to actually change a habit continuously, practicing every day. And it can take a while, but yes, very much around that idea of changing the neural pathways is very much part of that. I think it's to do with NLP and neuro-linguistic programming and various other ways of changing behavior. Because I think to make a career change, it is very much about habit change and breaking out of your comfort zone to some extent to be able to make that transition from one thing to another. So if you're in the current state and then you see your future desired state, somewhere in the middle, there's a zone which I think it's been called as a liminal zone, which is sort of in between one or the other. But at some point, you have to kind of let go gently of the past to move into that desired state. So it can be challenging. It can be scary. I think it's sort of not an easy thing to do in some cases. But the more propelling the vision, I think, for your future is, for me, I found it the more I can visualize it and be seeing myself more comfortable, I guess, in that desired future than where I am now. That tension then starts to move. You start to move forward, I think, in many different ways, and it's very true that there's definitely science behind it, but it's also at a different level. People might have some spiritual philosophies that might underlie this kind of thinking as well, depending on what your beliefs are. But the fact is, I think it works, and it's something that's exciting to create a future for yourself as well. I mean, there was a biblical line about where there's no vision, the people perish. It's somewhere in the Bible that says that. So I think that's true to some extent. If there is no vision, you can perish. You can just languish and just languish along. I think right now people are visualizing what it might be like after this pandemic. What is life going to be like, and start to visualize some of the things that you might be able to do again, or indeed do some things that are very different to what happened pre-pandemic as well.
It's interesting with the, talking about habits, because one of the things Nish and I were doing at the start of the year, I read BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits book, and one of the precursors or conditions to creating a habit is triggering the reward part of your brain. So there's not necessarily a time period attributed to creating a habit, but one of the conditions is that you feel good doing that action. So that idea about, the vision board and what are the actions in that, or imagining that and taking the action, is that you're triggering the reward part of your brain along the way, and we get kind of addicted to that as well. So it's interesting the science and the research behind what I think probably we intuitively know, and religion has known, and other forms of expression know. But I like that habit thing is that trigger that reward bit, and you're more likely to do it again if it makes you feel good doing it. So just in terms, just going back to, say, techniques that you've used, Warren, like, have you found a particular kind of visioning or vision board or technique to be most useful to you in terms of, is it thing that you've got on your wall, or is it a bunch of pictures or a spreadsheet? Or
Yeah, as I say, you can see the wall. I do have quotes. I've got. I think it can differ depending on what what you're used to. I mean, some people use fridges, they're fridge magnets, and put things on there. Some people have a foam board where you can actually put things on. I think it varies. I don't think there's any one technique. I think it has to work for you personally. I've used visual techniques. I have my I've heard it referred to as my advisory board is sort of all around this room. I've got all these quotes of famous people, dead and alive, who that motivate me every day. And so as soon as I come into this room, I start looking at these quotes. I've got some from Carl Jung and some from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross up there, and Eckhart Tolle and so on. So they just spur me on, and I think they are pointing to a vision of what the future might look like in some ways. But I think our future, and like as Eckhart Tolle might say, that our future is created in the now. So that the very habits we employ today create our future to some extent. So we need to be aware of habits. Habits are very powerful, and they can either propel us forward or they can keep us in the what we call that comfort zone, and that can, as you said, that crevice of water is so entrenched in the neural areas that can make it terribly difficult to break out of that. And it's being aware that you're in that zone is some of that awareness is actually something that once you get out of that, then where to from here? Setting that vision board, setting that vision for your own future, I think is part of that. That propelling you out of that, and they're looking for the rewards, as you said, Carolyn. Those rewards that potentially can come from that new state and that new vision. But as I say, every day is a possibility to change. It doesn't have to be something that's done in the future. That you can take the first step today, right now, in making a particular change in your life. So I'm very much a great believer of that, and I use that, I guess, that philosophy in my own life. Yeah.
Just one, I know you want to say something, Nash, but just really connected to what Warren's saying, a bit of the research that I read about triggering the dopamine in your brain, and I think it was done in mice or whatever, but you get put off when the effort is too much. So you don't get a bigger dopamine hit if you're visualizing something, if the effort of actually doing it is too much. So that idea about taking those smaller actionable steps where it doesn't seem so hard. And I think that's what BJ Fogg says in his book as well. It's why he calls it tiny habits, because, tiny, easy, fun step is going to get you further than, having the big goal and then being put off by the effort that it actually takes to get you there as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the idea, and I used to run one of the programs I ran when I did management development training was the Franklin Covey First Things First time management program, and very much based around having a personal mission at the base of the pyramid, and that was kind of you set that what that purpose of you might be, what that vision might look like, and then you build your long-term goals that align to that, like what a company might do in doing a strategic plan, but you're doing it for yourself. And then that's the short-term goals that you can start to, you look at that pyramid and you say, what short-term goals can I put in this week, next week? And then that rewards, you get those rewards, as you're talking about before, those rewards start to come through rather than, 2 years, 3 years out. It's something, for some people that's too far out, or even next week might be too far out, but to building those rewards and taking you through the step by step, but what your direction, where you're actually heading to, rather than just willy-nilly doing stuff. It's a good idea to try different things, and so of course some things won't always work out the way you plan. Obviously, say the best laid plans are bound to fail, and sometimes, but at least roughly, I guess, broadly where your compass might be, and what your direction might be, and what your ideal might be. I've been accused of being an idealist because that's part of my nature, I guess. In Myers-Briggs terms, I'm an INFP, so that intuitive feeling automatically puts me in the idealist category, apparently, from what I've been told. So in many ways, I've got to ground myself in some practice, but I think that combination of ideal and practical need to work together, I think, to make a move.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think when we were doing these cars, I consider myself that I'm quite restless when it comes to ideas, and I will call KB and say, KB, leave these cards, okay? I've just built something much bigger on the cards, right? And KB will say, yeah, all right, okay, yeah, do that, yeah, come back to me. No, 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 we don't. So I think at that moment, this visioning or this really creating shorter goals really helped us to track, because I'm easily get lost into the big bold, taking over the world ideas. And then it just helped, this visioning, and because we created we ran this like a project, this whole thing. And I'm actually writing a blog post about how did we really do this, because it isn't just about the cards, but it's also what thought process and how did we do it. But visioning really played a massive role, is to what do we want to really achieve, what are the smallest things. We created an Excel worksheet, and we would just go over that every time we speak. Just go over that, don't talk about anything else, just get this done, just get this done. And that really helped us to keep track of that. And secondly, what I had, probably for over a year, or that I had the idea of writing a book, on migrant job search and everything else. And once I wrote down all the chapters that I want to write, and I just stick them on the my office door, and they were there for more than a year. Like, they were there like a constant reminder of that. I didn't take any action on that for a while, but they were constant reminder that, oh, I've got this, I've got that, I know I need to do that on that one. And that's what really kind of, then eventually it's still in the process, but that's what visioning really did for me. But for the benefit of those people who've not got the cards with you, which I think it's shame that you've not bought the cards, but you should. That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So the card says, see it, be it, and become it. And we actually give you a kind of what we say, a template. That's right. We give you a template of, when you specifically are looking for work, we want you to really create a template. And it gives you a template, and stick that vision board wherever you are mostly. It's in kitchen, in fridge, in bathroom, on in your car. Stick it wherever it's possible, because that's what precisely does, is just reinforces you. And the it is actually in an active writing that we have done the vision. It's not about one day I will get it. No, you say exactly when, and you are really in that active writing of that. So that's what I really encourage kind of people to do.
That's
Yeah,
exactly right.
yeah.
Sorry,
So,
so Nate, when he said that one day I'm going to, that's exactly the sort of thing we run in this time management program, is that we get people to write down what they would respond to. One day I'm going to, and then we say,
mm,
okay, now let's turn that into a goal. Let's use the SMART technique for goal setting, and let's turn that around. But this one day I'm going to, it just sits there, doesn't it? Unless you do something with it. It's essentially, it's a prompter, but it's got to be action there, as you said, Nate. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I was just going to say, the act of actually putting it up. So, people walk into your room, Warren, and you've got the advisory board. I love that idea. I think I'm going to pinch it too. But is people can see what motivates and inspires you, right? So they know where your head's at and what you're talking about. And I remember when I was doing recruitment years ago, I stepped into a role where the last recruiter had left, and there was a lot of unhappiness around what was going on. And my manager at the time said, could you put up a whiteboard, and could you tell people on that whiteboard when they come into your office where everything's at? And that act of, putting up the vision actually meant that everybody knew that their request was going to be actioned, and that we were on top of it, and also how much we had to do as well. So I think those vision boards can actually really work for almost everybody in your life that needs to support you as well with where you want to go.
Yeah. Yes, I think a number of companies have taken on these concepts as well. In terms of the vision board for as you said, I've worked in an organisation that had a visual board of all the goals, sort of for the next 3 months and 12 months and so on, and breaking it down into smaller steps. But people would come into the room, we would all stand around the vision board, and we would all sort of explain where we're currently at, and would see if there's any interdependencies in our goals. So we're able to see if your goals are affecting my goals, and now we can talk about and link them together. So having this visualization of goals, and is a very powerful way, I think, to make it happen. And it works in a corporate sense, but I think we can translate some of the corporate techniques into our personal lives in a very similar way. If an organization can have a purpose, why not an individual? Why not a mission statement for ourselves, not just a corporation or an organization? So to translate some of those things, I think, are really important, and taking that step. But it gives us direction. I think direction is important. Going back to that quote, where there's no vision, the people perish. Well, I think it's important to have something to strive towards, but also understand that there will be rocky times, and it's not going to be a straight line to achieving a goal. That you learn along the way. So if you get into a situation where there's a barrier, but you still know that the goal's there, you find a way around it. You look at, like you say, the water will find a way around the rock in different directions until it gets the path it wants to go to. It's the same thing, but it's a motivation. It's a strong motivation to have a goal and have a direction that you can aspire towards, I think, and then talk to others about it, and other people can come on board and help you achieve that if you articulate that very carefully. I know as a recruiter, Carolyn, when people are not sure about what direction they want to take, the recruiter's always concerned about, are you really clear on what the direction is? Are you clear you really want this job? Really state that and really believe in what you're saying. That really is a great way to convince a recruiter as well, I think.
And it's funny, that act of, I guess, that physical act of writing something, and you're going back to that neural pathway that's been created. You're starting to, if you physically, like with your book, Nash, you've physically written what chapter, what blueprint, and the same with the plan for the cards. It's like, okay, I'm starting that journey. But I think might have been Melinda on the show talking about morning routines and what actually got her fired up. And one of the things that she said was that she didn't cross things off her to-do list. She gave herself a tick when she did them. And just that act of ticking something is, again, triggering that reward part of your brain as well. So, yeah, it's funny how all of these things are we do them intuitively, but they're very interconnected as well.
Yeah, that's something I've done. Since some of the techniques in the time course I mentioned before that I was running, I've incorporated into sort of daily habits. I can't get through the day now unless I have some kind of list that I can tick off and prioritize. And it's just makes I would just lose I'd be very uncomfortable and very anxious if I didn't start my day in doing it in some way. So so for some people, it's you're a morning person. You do it the first thing in the morning. That planning time. This course sort of demonstrated the importance of 15 minutes planning time every day, or the last thing you do in the evening, to set the tone for the rest of the day. So to actually start laying down exactly what the priorities are, because the priorities are things you say yes to, and you've got to say no to other things. And then you have to realize that the high priority things are the things you actually say yes to. So in setting your daily plan, it's not just work focused, but it's your family, it's your social, your financial goals have to go in every day, because if you don't change your financial goals either, well, you're going to be on a path that might lead you into some sort of deficit in the future. So it's taking that those small steps every day, maybe to accumulate some savings as well. Every day, to put something aside on a monthly basis, for example, in some sort of fund. But unless you take that, life is just going to drift. You're just going to be drifting along. So I tend to have incorporated much of that in my daily plan. I feel better at the end of the day too. As you say, that getting the ticks is one thing, gives you that maybe that reward, but you feel as though you've actually achieved things, and not only that, you've got the power to. If you don't achieve everything, that's fine. You got the power to. Where I would do a little symbol called an arrow forward, which actually, if I don't achieve the goal, the task I put down for the day, to actually say I'm empowered enough to know I'm not going to achieve that, but I know what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to forward it across, and it's going to go into another day this week. So therefore, I feel like I've still taken a reasonable amount of control over that. And I don't feel frustrated that it's fallen off the edge of the table and I'm not going to do anything with it. So, I think even the power to say, no, I'm not going to do that goal today is empowering in itself, in a roundabout sort of way, because you are making a decision. That's some priorities are higher than others. And the whole day is not going to be a constant tick of your goals. But, to say, let's get the important things done as much as you possibly can, and then the
Mm.
other things will sort of settle around that.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, so we don't have any more question. If you've got any question, any comments, please drop that in the chat box so that we can have a look and talk about your vision board. If you've created one, if you are interested to create one, or if you know any anecdotes on that, please keep that coming to us, as well, because we'd like to know how you've been using that, because everyone uses different, like how Warren has he's got a lot of quotes on the wall which triggers something. So everyone is different. I usually keep a notebook with myself. It's not dated at all. I create the date on that and just start to write what I'm going to do it today. And I'm still an old school person. I don't somehow creating those things on computer is not something that I really like, because it's not free flowing. I just still like to write my way, and I usually do it a night before I go to bed. I've got that written down. This is what I've got to do, and then there are comments on that, so exactly I know what to do, rather than I'm relying on a computer or anything else, because it's just a and that's one of the reason why we created the cards, because I think there is some value in holding them.
Yeah.
There's some value, because it's easy to convert this into an app, and people won't even remember that I've got this app on there, right? It's a constant reminder that it sits on it sits there, and you can access it anytime you want and pick up something and surprise yourself. And I think there's something about the granular nature of it, that I've got this card, this is what I'm going to do, and that's what we really really liked about it.
I think it's so important. We've gone, so digital in recent years that there's some of the students I meet now are quite happy to write things down in books, and it's not old-fashioned idea. It's actually becoming a very new idea
Mm.
in some ways, to write things down on a book that you can take with you, or write on a whiteboard in your home. I think students are coming back to holding books in their hand again. I know the local bookstore I have, it's getting flooded. He said most of my customers are now in their early 20s, and they're buying paperback books. So
Mm.
that's an interesting sign. I think we're heading back to that kind of way. That I all my diaries are in paper. I find that much easier to scribble and
Mm.
write. You can mind map and do lots of other things as well with that. And I think the thought of a digital screen going blank on me one day and losing all my reminders would also send me very, very anxious anyway. So I know that with paper, I'm pretty much
Yeah.
safe in the knowledge that I can open it up and see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Something nice about it, isn't it? And I keep saying with our cards, I just have this vision of coaches using them, and somebody's come in and they're like, oh, I've tried everything, I'm going mad, I feel terrible about my job hunt, and they bring up the cards against insanity and go, look, we'll pull a card and here's today's activity, and there's a bit of randomness with it as well. So
I'll be using these with my students, absolutely, because when I put the LinkedIn post on, someone actually wrote that comment that coaches can use these cards in their coaching practice. It's a fantastic way to visualize. I mean, I think people can see the card, they can read a little description of what that means, and then think about how it might apply in their life. So I'm definitely going to be using these cards in my work with my clients. Absolutely, I think it's a great effort, and congratulations on getting
thank
that
you.
done, because you have to set a goal yourself to be able to.
That's right. The goal not to kill each other.
And the great illustrations as well. The visuals
Yeah.
are really, really nice. So it's a great job. So I hope you get lots of inquiries about that, and I think that'll do well, very well.
Yeah.
But I had a student yesterday. Someone might be watching this program today and saying, well, what if I don't have one single focus direction or whatever? I met a student yesterday who was what I would probably call a multi-potentialite, and I'm not sure if that would, but he kind of said, I have so many interests, I really don't know what to focus on. And not only that, I'm good at every one of them, he said.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was
But
quite a
there's a
challenge.
movement around it. There's a movement
Yeah.
around it,
Yeah.
multi-potential idea.
Yes.
Emily Wapnick runs her own community around
Mhm.
people's ability to do multiple things. And I
Mhm.
think that needs to be celebrated more, coming from a place of resources. is incredibly. I think Warren, you, me, and KB, we are all multi-skilled in a way. We've got different things that we want to do in life, and what I've learned during my design thinking program with those two, Bill and Dave, is that you can combine those two things and make a
Yes.
career out of it. You can combine three things and make a career out of it. It's no longer, and I think that itself could be liberating for people, because there is that we've been told to be more crystal clear about about like single focus mind and do that, but it doesn't work for everyone. People have got,
No.
you can't help it. If somebody plays great guitar, you play great guitar. You can't just say, I'm not going to play that at all because I'm into business development role and this does not go together. Well, I say it goes amazingly together if you can
Yes. Yes.
make that like a unique cocktail of skill. It goes amazingly together. But I think people are too scared to be branded like that. You've lost your path and you're going this way. I think that's what I feel about that.
Yeah, the society has a way of sort of pigeonholing people. You need to do this or this, not that and that. Which in the university I work in, it's more about convergence, I guess, and looking at the convergence. Particularly when I speak to medical students, they're talking about robotics in surgery and so on. So they're now looking at the engineering skills, working with the medical health sciences areas. So there is a convergence happening more. And I know there are a number of PhD students who are cutting across faculties and getting involved in multiple, working together from the sciences into the humanities area, into the arts areas, and combining them and finding there are some fascinating projects that are resulting from convergence of ideas, I think. And I think the careers in the future, as you said, Naish, will be very much about that convergence, from different things rather than just being in one particular area. So we're going to see more of that, I think. So I think for that student I met yesterday, I sort of encouraged him to try different things, but it's particularly challenging too when you are good at many, many different things to try and visualize what your future might be. But he's going to certainly try a number of different things. He's going to talk to some mentors and get some clarity about what he might do. But obviously, you can earn a living doing some things, and of course, you can put them into your hobbies or other things outside of your paid work as well, which I think is really important to have that really good balance in your life
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
One of the things I do when I work on people's resumes or LinkedIn profiles, I always dig into other things that they do apart from their job, because it makes people, and then I try and put a reference into that, because we bring our whole selves to work, but that makes you more engaging and more interesting and more human as well. We've got a comment it's coming up as LinkedIn user, and can't see who it is, but so apologies for not using your name. Love your show, Nation KB, tick. Thanks, Warren, for sharing your experience of vision boarding and visualizing. I love vision boarding for myself and when clients, particularly visual thinkers and hands-on problem solvers. I'd love to know how often you create a new vision board and how do you work out when it's time to create a new one? So good question.
Yeah. That is a very good question, because I think you're right. It's over your lifetime, you certain things capture your imagination more, and it takes you in different areas. So it's a constant review all the time. I think when you look at, I look at the translation of how I'm interested in how companies set their visions too, and I understood when I did some research that Toyota have set a 50-year vision for their company, and I think, well, 50 years, who would think about what's going to happen in 50 years? But that they've been very successful. Obviously, Toyota is a very successful company, but what they do is they say, we've got a 50-year plan, but we review it every year. So that 50 years is always ahead of them. But it's a good idea to review your vision board, I think, constantly, to see if that's meeting your mark. And with a vision board, you can take things off the board that are not going to you want to take into your future, and you can add things that you want to take into your future. So I don't think anything's set in cement in that sense. I think it's very much an evolving thing, and over time. But having, if you have your own, and I know there's a club called the 5 O'Clock Club, which is a career counseling service in the US. They talk about also having a very 50-year plan for your own career. It stretches your mind to the point where you think, well, how can you conceive that? But in many ways, that helps you develop a direction in your life, I think. If you could sort of go that far some of us will be, maybe not pushing up daisies, as they say, in 50 years or 60 years, but there will be some who can say, look, it doesn't have to be 50 years, it can be 5 years, it can be 10 years. And to always to set those goals. And I remember seeing, I went to a financial planning seminar, and there was this guy, he looked about 75, 80 years old, and he's talking about the share market in 20 years' time will be fantastic. And people are saying, well, goodness me, you're not going to be, actually, you may not even be alive when those shares are tripling in value and so on. But he said, no, I've always set goals that are stretch goals, and really, I think it's important to be able to do things today with my finances, so I know that in 10 or 20 years' time, it's going to be like this. So I think you can apply this in many areas of your life, but it's particularly important for your career as well, to do these sort of techniques we've been talking about. But to answer your question in a long-winded way, but review it quite often, I think, and don't feel it has to be set in cement. Your vision will change as your values change and as you change as well.
If I can just quickly, one of the other kind of exercise that people can do, if you can't think 50-year of vision, you can say, this is your last day of retirement. What would you write? What would you say? You are just retiring tonight. What would you say? I think that's equally a powerful exercise for you to do, because you'll be reflecting on the legacy, you'll be reflecting on the impact that you had, and I think that's also a very powerful exercise that people can do. If you think that you can't see this way, but if you want to reflect back, like Back to the Future movie, if you want to reflect back, that's equally a powerful exercise for people to do. I just want to also, because vision and goal are two distinct things, and that's very kind of important to understand. In my view, vision is something that you can never achieve, right? It's just beyond. It's not about achieving something. It's kind of a bigger thing that calls you to action. It's kind of, I read in one of the church here that eliminate poverty is a vision, right? It's like, is it possible? 100%? I don't think so. But it's still, this thing is much bigger than myself and calling me. And I'm, even though if I retire, that still exists, that this is what I lived for. This is what I was driven by. And I think that's just very important to kind of distinct. Otherwise, what happens is that we create goals and we think, yeah, I achieved, but I don't know what am I really here for. I don't know what is it, to reduce weight, or is it to I don't know, to have two investment property. Is it what exactly is in my career vision? And I think that's probably much a bigger calling than just what Barack Obama said, yes we can, or hope. It's a bigger calling. It's not about whether you can achieve the hope in next 5 years or not. You probably won't be able to do it. But that's how I think that we all can think on those lines when it comes to
and I think
career vision.
Simon Sinek has written this book called Start With Why, and I think that's really resonating with the number of students I meet as well. So they're really looking now for organizations that fit in with their purpose and their why, and that's becoming increasingly important. They don't want to work in an organization that doesn't sort of add value to the world in some way. For sustainability is very, very an important goal for many organizations, and students are looking for organizations that have those clearly stated in their strategic goals, because it's about, I want to contribute something over and above, like bigger than what it is myself. I want to contribute something in a bigger way. And so you'll start to see that organizations are starting to look at this idea of purpose as well, to attract obviously better people that align to their own particular purpose as well. But it was Steve Jobs who said, this is all about, if I'm going to recruit someone into Apple, it's all about, I'm going to ask them about the status quo and how they would challenge the status quo. That's the key thing I'm looking for. The rest I can train when they get on the job. I can train all the skills when they get on board, but they need to have this idea that they want to challenge the status quo. and it goes beyond just a product. It's an actual mindset. It's a way of thinking, and that's how innovative that organization has become, as we know. But it's important to build those things into your own why as well, and to try and examine what that why might be and what you might want to contribute that comes from that core inner examination, which does take a little while and time to reflect to do that. And I think a lot of us have probably had some of that time during the pandemic to really think about our careers and our jobs. And we're hearing about the great resignation potentially coming up now, that there will be a massive amount of people, maybe wanting to shift their careers because they've been now thinking about, they've been at home and thinking, well, maybe there are things here that are more important to me now than maybe doing that commute into the office and those sort of things. So in many ways, it's a positive thing to happen out of a pandemic. But for most people, it's sometimes it takes time to get away. You need to reflect on to develop and think about your personal goals and mission. That sometimes you just need to get away for a little while, get into a beach house and overlook the ocean and just have a little pad in front of you and just write things out. I've done that myself times. You just need that time out to be able to do that self-examination, and it takes a purposeful time that you have to commit to do that.
I think that's hence the name, the vision board, because it really does help you clarify what you want and what your purpose might be, and it serves as a lovely visual reminder. So, yeah. Last question from the same LinkedIn user, I think. Have you helped groups or teams of people create a vision board? So I guess, have you used a particular technique with teams that's been quite effective?
Yes, I've run workshops where we've looked at setting goals and so on for the future. And I think when I was in that media role, I was working with the team that produced the Weekly Times, the rural publication. And we went away for a weekend, and we got a whole lot of Post-it notes up on the boards, and we had a look at what the vision of the publication might look like. And I think that the staff came up with some tremendous ideas. The managing editor of the Weekly Times at the time was very much committed to getting in collaboration with staff to send ideas. So I think the importance of that, and particularly the manager, had a strong view that if you're going to get ownership into creating a product in the future that you want to create, that you have to buy in and you have to own that particular goal. So in the teamwork, in the team exercises I've done, where I've helped set the direction, I've been basically a facilitator of that, is that you have everyone on board putting ideas in, brainstorming, and not being too judgmental about any ideas that come up. And then later you can start to sift through what are the most important things and what are the easier ones to achieve, perhaps. But to really open it up really wide in the beginning and say, let's take this away. What is the Weekly Times going to look like? If it's not in a newspaper, what is it going to be? Is it going to be a digital product? How is it going to help the people in the rural districts about who are going through droughts? I mean, how are they going to keep up to date with information? So look at the digital aspects, and then part of their strategy then incorporated digital and other ways. So they just looked beyond the actual product and looked at the whole idea of this is about helping farmers and agricultural people become better at what they do. So very much about getting involvement, I think, and getting ownership of goals is very important if it's in a team environment, to make sure that everyone's committed to that and they're all knowing what direction they're going in.
Fantastic.
That's a great question. Yeah, thank you for that.
Excellent. On that note, we are finishing today's show. Warren, thank you again for coming on the show and playing the game with us. And hopefully the audience have found it useful. I've already put the link of where you can go and learn more about Cards Against Insanity, and also buy those cards as well, because currently the cards is around is $34.95, but that's going to go up. The price is going to go up a few dollars. So if you want to get it at a discounted rate, do that straight away, and we will ship this card box to you. And as we will be picking up a card on our LinkedIn live shows and talking about it. So that just reinforces the learning and what we are trying to achieve through those cards. And yeah, KB, anything else?
Just to say that you and your post office owner are becoming quite friendly with the cards that you're shipping, Nish. So just have this vision of like, oh, you're back again. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Yeah.
precisely what she said. She said, but tell me, what are you selling? What is this? And I said, oh, these are, and these are true incidents. Yes. So, this is about activity cards that the people who are looking for work, then, they can do. And she said, you know what? I say to them, get off your bed. I said, that's pretty funny. That's like that.
She's got kids, obviously. So,
It's
but yeah,
great to become a talking point at your local post office, because
that's right.
these cards are going to go far, and they're in various places, and they're going to be used all over the place. So again,
Yeah.
congratulations on a great effort for those cards. I think it's
Thank
well done.
you. Yeah. Thank you so much. So, yeah, please follow the hashtag Cards Against Insanity. Please follow the hashtag Career Care Package to keep up to date with what we're up to. Please subscribe, or if you're watching this on YouTube. Nation and I are on mission. Maybe we should create a vision board around this of getting to 1,000 subscribers and then retiring somewhere. Anyway, who knows? So, and yeah, what's coming up next week, Nash?
Yeah, so next week we are talking to Claire Harvey. She's a career practitioner, and she's also a counselor in city of Frankston. So she's coming along talking about constructing your career. So that would be an insightful discussion again. So do join us on next week, Friday, 12 p.m. And we are still not out of the woods. So go get your jab, roll up your sleeves, get vaccinated so that we can go ahead and enjoy what what we love in our life, and stay safe and look after yourself. See you next week, everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.